What if I told you a single word quietly destroyed an investigation? Not a gunshot, not a misstep, but a label. Runaway. Say it once and everything changes. The urgency fades, the search contracts, evidence cools, and the family is left shouting into a hollow that keeps answering, not with leads, but with assumptions. Listen, they were told it was voluntary. Case closed almost. And here's the brutal part. That simple shorthand redirected time, resources, and hope. It made detectives see a choice where there might have been danger. It made everyone stop looking with the hunger that a missing person deserves. And years later, when new information arrived, the timeline had already been written. Too late. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through how that word used in the first hours reshaped an entire investigation. I'll show you what got missed, why families hurt the most, and how hindsight revealed a different truth, one that might have been found if someone had asked a different question at the start. Stay with me, because this is not just one story, it's a pattern. And it might be happening right now. When a loved one disappears, the first hours are everything. You probably already know that. Investigators say it all the time. Evidence is freshest. Witness memories are clear. Digital footprints warm. But what happens when the first call to police includes the line, "I think they ran away"? That line can turn a siren into a shrug. Let me tell you about a family I spent months with. Names changed, details blurred to protect the living, but the pattern is real. Emily was 20 years old when she went missing. She had a small circle of friends, a part-time job, a scholarship that kept her busy. On the afternoon she disappeared, her phone pinged home for the last time near a bus stop. Her mother called the police, frantic. The initial officer who took the call wrote in the report, "Presumed runaway. Presumed." That one word is soft, almost clinical. But its effect was anything but soft. With that presumption, the case was triaged down. A senior detective later told me the team assumed this was not an abduction risk. They assumed voluntary departure based on a handful of ambiguous social posts and a teenager's past argument. Search priorities shifted. Surveillance footage requests moved to the back of the queue. Subpoenas for phone metadata were delayed. Days stretched into weeks. Imagine being Emily's mother. Night after night she sat by the phone, replaying details, begging for leads. Every delayed warrant felt like a cut. Every day that passed erased possibilities. If a vehicle had passed that bus stop the same afternoon, the video might have been overwritten after 72 hours. If a phone ping could have been triangulated within 24 hours, patterns could have emerged. But the label, "Runaway," allowed time to slip away. Here's the thing about investigative psychology. First impressions anchor decisions. Humans, even trained detectives, are susceptible to cognitive biases. Anchoring bias makes that initial theory, runaway, sticky. Confirmation bias then nudges people to notice details that fit the runaway story and ignore those that don't. Availability bias makes officers recall similar voluntary departures and treat the current case similarly. Institutions are efficient and human. They follow patterns. So when the pattern label arrives early, the whole system primes itself to behave differently. That means less canvassing in neighborhoods where abductions might occur. It means fewer roadblocks and less immediate cooperation with neighboring jurisdictions. It means family testimonies are sometimes treated like background noise instead of urgent clues, and families, desperate for action, begin to feel dismissed. They are told to wait. They are told the person left by choice. They endure polite pity that stings worse than any accusation. I listen to conversations where parents describe what it's like to be told, "Your adult child might have chosen to vanish." You brace for the worst, and then you are asked to accept a scenario that makes you responsible for not stopping them. That responsibility becomes a weight. Why didn't I argue more? Why didn't I notice? The label works twice. It slows the investigation, and it shames those left behind. Weeks later, small things started to poke holes in that first assumption. A CCTV clip surfaced because a cashier at a faraway convenience store remembered a van that seemed out of place. Had officers not been asked to pull footage quickly, that clip might have been erased. A social message, originally read as a tantrum, contained a phrase that suggested coercion. A trail of receipts revealed purchases that didn't match a runaway narrative. Hindsight rearranged the evidence into a different picture, one of vulnerability, not volition. And here's another bitter truth. Evidence decays with time and attention. Biological traces fade. Memories blur. CCTV overwrites. Digital backups run out. Forensic opportunities are perishable. When you treat a case as low priority because someone said they left on purpose, you trade patience for loss. You create gaps that can never be filled. When the family finally demands renewed attention, you sometimes hear, too late, that a lead that could have been followed was lost because the clock was not treated like a predator. Think about how the justice system trains on classification. Labels speed up processes. They funnel resources. That is a necessary part of managing caseloads. But classification also brings the risk of premature closure. There's a term for this in policing: tunnel vision. Once a hypothesis takes hold, everything else is forced through a narrowed lens. If your starting point assumes consent, you will overlook coercion. If you assume voluntary departure, you might miss surveillance on the main arterial roads. If you assume a runaway, you might not treat social media as a forensic goldmine. Families taught me about the small human costs. The sister who stopped posting birthday photos because the world would only offer sympathy that sounded suspicious. The father who couldn't bear to attend school meetings after someone suggested his child had been living a secret life. The partner who replayed every word they'd said in the last conversation, grasping at nuance to explain what no one else had taken seriously. These emotional injuries are long-term. They calcify. Grief gets tangled with anger, with guilt, with public judgment. There is also the community cost. A label like Runaway sends a message. This person chose to disappear, so calm down. When neighbors stop looking, when local shopkeepers stop remembering faces, community memory erodes. Community-based searches rely on collective attention. When that attention is muted by an accepted narrative, the net gets holes. So what happened when the officers revisited the case? They reclassified after weeks. New forensic teams were assigned. Warrants were executed. The new layers of inquiry uncovered things that should have been accessible earlier. DNA swabs that would have given a fingerprint match were contaminated by delayed collection. Witness timelines that might have aligned were forgotten. In the end, some answers emerged, but many doors had closed forever. This is not a singular tragic tale. It's a pattern replicated in many investigations worldwide. I reviewed cases, spoke with retired detectives, and consulted forensic psychologists. Consensus emerges. Initial theory shapes investigation exponentially. A misstep early on compounds. It's not just a story about policing. It's about how institutions, pressed for time and resources, lean on labels as shortcuts. Labels are not inherently evil. They are tools. But when wielded without humility, they become blinders. What would a different approach look like? First, treat every missing person as an unknown risk until evidence suggests otherwise. That means immediate preservation of potential evidence, camera footage, call metadata, bank transactions. It means rapid coordination across agencies. It means listening deeply to families without translating grief into speculation. It means asking the question, what if we are wrong? Small changes matter. A policy that mandates immediate, time-limited preservation requests for surveillance can save days. Training that highlights cognitive bias helps investigators pause and reassess. Family liaison officers who validate and collect detailed history without bias can surface critical context. Community alert systems that do not frame disappearances as voluntary by default keep public attention engaged without sensationalizing. These are practical, not romantic fixes. Let me give you an example of a procedural change that worked. In one precinct, they implemented a rule. During the first 24 hours, treat the case as critical until a multidisciplinary team confirms an alternative. That one policy raised the rate of recovered surveillance leads by nearly 30%. It cost some administrative hours, it saved crucial evidence, and it kept families from facing the double trauma of loss and dismissal. But policies alone won't change everything. We need cultural change within institutions. Officers must feel empowered to say, "We might be wrong," without fearing criticism. Families must be supported, not sidelined. Communities must hold authorities accountable for timelines and transparency. And the media must resist the urge to label too quickly, because headlines shape public perception and pressure. Now, I want to be clear. Not every person who leaves voluntarily is endangered. There are legitimate cases of adults choosing to start over. My point is not to criminalize choice. My point is to challenge premature certainty. When we rush to a conclusion, we trade accuracy for convenience. And for families, that trade is devastating. There is also a moral dimension. When we label a disappearance as a runaway, we carry an implicit judgment. We suggest agency where there might be none. We suggest blame where there might be victimization. That moral shorthand can haunt loved ones for years, makes them question their own instincts, their parenting, their relationships. So, what can you do if someone you know disappears, and you feel the system is leaning toward easy answers? First, document everything. Keep a timeline of calls, messages, and sightings. Request written confirmations of when evidence requests were made. Ask about preservation orders for footage and data. Find a family liaison or an advocate who understands investigative steps. And if you feel sidelined, ask for escalation. It's not being difficult, it's protecting possibilities. As viewers, we can also press for broader change. Support organizations that push for missing persons reforms. Ask your local representatives about policies for early preservation, and multidisciplinary rapid response teams. Encourage police departments to publish clear protocols. Demand training that addresses cognitive bias. These are not abstract reforms. They are life-saving adjustments. Before I close, consider the question that still haunts me. How many cases have been quietly rerouted into a folder labeled Runaway, never to be re-examined? How many clues were overwritten? How many conversations were forgotten? How many leads died in the hours when someone assumed volition? The truth is we don't know. And that uncertainty is a moral demand. It asks us to be cautious with certainty. It asks us to keep searching harder rather than classifying easier. If you were moved by this episode, here are 2 simple things you can do right now. 1. Share this story. Conversations shape culture. 2. If you know someone working in law enforcement, start a dialogue about early preservation and bias training. These small nudges can ripple into systemic change. I want to end with a question I hope you take into the comments. Imagine a world where every missing person case was treated with maximum curiosity before any assumption set in. How many lives might be saved? How many families might avoid decades of grief complicated by doubt? Tell me what you think. Share a time you saw assumptions derail a search or a policy that helped get answers faster. If you have ideas for reform, put them in the comments. We will read them. We will share the best ones with advocates fighting for change. Remember this: labels are useful, but they are not final. The next time you hear the word runaway, ask, what if we are wrong? Because sometimes being wrong cheese beyond pride. It costs time, evidence, and closure. And for a family waiting by the phone, those costs are everything. If this video resonated, like it, share it, and subscribe for more deep dive investigations into how systems fail and how we fix them. Leave your thoughts below. Tell me what question we should tackle next. And above all, hold the line for curiosity, especially when the easy answer is the one that lets us stop looking. How many cases might still be solvable if we challenged our first assumptions? Think about it and tell me what you believe.